One of the survivors suddenly perked up as the sound of footsteps echoed down the stairs. He shouted that the Childu group was coming and someone appeared to be injured. One of the Childu men called out for assistance. At the same time, Dokja, who had been helping a woman down the stairs, heard someone shout his name. He looked up and was startled to see Sangha, Lee Hyunsung, and the child approaching. Sangha gasped with her hand over her mouth, uttering Dokja's name in disbelief. The child ran straight toward Dokja and threw her arms around him. Sangha rushed over, exclaiming how relieved she was that Dokja was alive and safe. Hyunsung, following behind, apologized for what had happened and admitting with guilt that he had left Dokja behind. Dokja assured him that it was all right. He had no choice at the time. Hyunsung added that thankfully, Junghyuk-yu had been right. That name caught Dokja's attention. He asked in surprise, "Junghyuk-yu?" Hyunsung explained that Junghyuk had predicted Dokja might still be alive. When Dokja asked about Junghyuk's whereabouts, Hyunsung told him that Junghyuk had left the station the previous day. At that moment, Dokja internally pieced the situation together. He realized that, originally, the Childu group should have been killed by Junghyuk-yu, but since Junghyuk had left in a hurry, they survived. Dokja reflected that Junghyuk, a regressor now in his third round, had likely left to pursue his own goals, ruthlessly focused, reborn as a monster who monopolized everything. And yet, Dokja knew that Junghyuk was not someone to leave loose ends. He murmured aloud that Junghyuk wasn't the type to leave anything unfinished. Sangha, confused, asked what he meant, but Dokja brushed it off, saying he was only talking to himself. It was a habit of his. A system window appeared. The constellation, Secretive Plotter, is pleased that you are talking out loud. Dokja then noted that someone was missing, prompting Sangha to mention Mr. Han, only to be cut off by a loud shout telling everyone to get out of the way. A group of armed people suddenly surrounded Dokja, Sangha, Hyunsung, and the child. Mr. Han, holding a metal pipe, pointed at Dokja in disbelief. Stammering, he accused Dokja of being evil and insisted he didn't belong there. The group stood frozen in confusion. Then, a man laughingly stepped forward and placed a hand on Mr. Han's shoulder, urging him to calm down and play nice, since they were all survivors now. With a sinister smile, he introduced himself to Dokja as In-ho Cheon and asked for his name. Dokja recognized the name. It rang a bell. As he shook hands with In-ho, he internally concluded that this man had a supporting constellation and was most likely the leader of the Cheoldu group. Dokja assumed In-ho would want revenge for the earlier beating his men received, and clenched the thorn he kept hidden in his hand. Surprisingly, In-ho said he had heard from the others that Dokja had fought monsters and saved his men. Dokja was stunned. That wasn't what he expected. In-ho gathered the people around and announced that the brave new member, Dokja, had brought them food. With a wicked grin, he praised the food as something to eat and welcomed Dokja to Gumho Station with mock enthusiasm. Dokja clenched his fists as thoughts swirled in his mind. So this is how it's going to be, he thought grimly. A system message popped up. The constellation Secretive Plotter is excited. Later, Hyunsung told Dokja there were 86 survivors at Gumho Station, 87, counting Dokja. Dokja remarked that the number was smaller than he'd expected. Hyunsung explained that only those in the cabin and near the station had survived. Everyone had passed the first scenario, but no one spoke of the cost. Dokja understood the implication. Every survivor had killed someone to live. Every one of them was a murderer. Hyunsung gestured at the people, explaining that the station was now divided into two groups, the major and the minor. The major group, including Mr. Han, reassured people that help would come soon and that the chairman was doing all he could. People admired Mr. Han, referring to him as the young master of Hangyang Corporation. The minor group, on the other hand, consisted of ordinary civilians. A child tugged at her mother, saying she was hungry, while the mother reassured her they would be rescued. Others clung to the hope that the government would intervene. Dokja observed it all silently, thinking to himself that even among murderers, humans still divided themselves into the strong and the weak. He wondered if everyone here had truly believed there was no other way. In-ho stood before the people, encouraging them not to lose hope and promising they would escape eventually. Hyun-song said the major group controlled food distribution and that they had started sending people to scavenge. Hui-won, the woman Dokja had saved, was one of those assigned. Only the minor group members, however, never returned from those missions. When Dokja asked who Hui-won was, Sangha told him her name and added that a few others had gone with her. But none from the major group were ever chosen. Dokja commented that Hyun-song hadn't joined the major group, which surprised him. Surely they would have welcomed him. Hyun-song replied that something about the major group felt wrong to him. He didn't know much about ethics, but he had a gut feeling. Even so, he admitted feeling hypocritical for thinking about morality after all they'd done. Dokja placed a hand on Hyun-song's chest and said it was better to worry about right and wrong as a hypocrite than not worry at all. Hyun-song, moved, stared at Dokja with teary eyes. Just then, In-ho Cheon approached and called for Dokja. Dokja reminded himself that just because a situation was unavoidable didn't mean it could be justified. It must never be forgotten. In-ho got straight to the point and asked Dokja to join their group. Hyun-song looked alarmed. Dokja thought to himself, so that's the angle he's going with now? In-ho offered him a high position and said he hoped Dokja would help lead the group. When Dokja asked what would happen if he refused, In-ho laughed and said the thought hadn't even crossed his mind. Dokja was a hero. How could he not lead? Dokja touched his chin, processing the situation. So this is your plan, to use me like that? He thought. In-ho insisted it wasn't about grandeur, it was about cooperating for everyone's survival. He pointed to the people, asking Dokja if he couldn't see their suffering. Later, Dokja and Hyun-song sat together. Hyun-song asked if Dokja had made the right choice in refusing. Dokja countered with a question. Did Hyun-song want him to accept the offer? Hyun-song quickly said no, but confessed that In-ho's final words stuck with him. In a flashback, In-ho had told Dokja to come find him if he ever changed his mind. Dokja had replied that it would never happen. In-ho simply chuckled and said, "We'll see about that." Back in the present, Dokja repeated those words. "We'll see what happens." Then he changed the subject, asking if everyone was hungry. He offered food to the group. Sangha asked if they really could eat it, just as someone shouted in the distance. A group of angry people approached, accusing Dokja of hoarding food. A man demanded to know if he was monopolizing it. A woman said that food should be shared with everyone. Another person pointed out that others had gone with Dokja to retrieve the food. Yet another shouted that In-ho should be put in charge of distributing food. From behind the crowd, In-ho watched silently. Dokja looked at him and reflected that the most dangerous person in an apocalyptic world wasn't someone driven by despair like Chol Su-bang. No, he remembered now. In-ho Cheon from Gomho Station was the real threat, a man who used other people's despair as fertilizer for his power. In-ho smiled coldly, internally prompting Dokja to choose, become a hero by sharing the food, or a villain by keeping it for himself. Dokja clutched the bag of food tightly. Just then, a system message appeared. You have entered the second scenario area. Find and move to the location where the scenario will be activated.